to Toronto. Okay, let's get things going.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Unnamed Sports Show. I am your host, Joshua Griffith, here on the Sports Talk by Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. I have a great guest interview that I did yesterday on today's show with Sportsnet's Donnovan Bennett. So we're going to get to that shortly. First off, got to do the housekeeping duties. So make sure, if you don't already, follow me on Twitter at Joshua Griffith0. Like the video down below, subscribe to Sports Talk Line's YouTube channel, and hit that big blue join button because you're going to get a lot of extra perks and stuff. So we've got a couple videos out outlining membership packages and details, so you can check those out. Like I said, so excited for Donnovan Bennett's interview. We chat some NBA. We kind of talk about how he got started in the industry. What's his favorite sport to cover. Talked about some of the old score days. And some NBA and what's kind of going on with the Raptors and what we can maybe expect from them this season. So I know Lee has that ready to go for everyone. So without further ado, this is my interview with Donnovan Bennett from Sportsnet. So I am joined now by Donnovan Bennett from Sportsnet. Donnovan, thank you very much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Just want to make sure you and your family have been doing safe and staying healthy during these times with all the numbers back on the rise.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a interesting half year, 3/4 of a year, but luckily, my family has been as healthy and as happy as possible. I feel like we're all kind of grading on a curve these days, but we've taken as many precautions as we could, and so far so good. So yeah, things are good.
That's really good to hear too. So there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about today, and we don't have that much time, so let's get right into things. Former Western Mustangs running back in sports, formerly CIS, and then made the move into media. Just wondering if you could tell people kind of about the transition into media and how you got your start.
Yeah, I mean, that's like 1,000 years ago now. The short version of the story is, when I was finishing up my time at Western, my last, year or two, as a student, I knew either I wanted to continue to play sports, and the sport was football, or cover sports and be close to it. I knew if I did like a 9-to-5 job in a cubicle, I would go a little bit crazy. And so, I did not win the genetic lottery. So I was pretty certain at the time that a 170-pound Canadian running back was not necessarily in high demand in the CFL. And so, I tried to exhaust as many broadcasting opportunities as possible. And, luckily, Dwayne Ford, a fellow, Western alum, fellow running back, fellow Toronto native, really kind of had an affinity towards me and helped me out and helped me intern on his show and, gave me, best practices and advice, and really was a mentor for me and continues to be one. I was able to intern on his show, CFL Snap, at the Score at the time, as he's now moved on to TSN. The Van A Cup was in Saskatchewan that year. So the first year the Score had it under their rights, and it was a big deal. It was like our Super Bowl. And, as a student, I had every intention to play in the game. But when that didn't happen, I helped out with their coverage, flew out to Saskatchewan, kind of on my own dime, put myself up in a hotel, just to kind of be around, the team and help wherever, that was. Now, for me, I was hoping that would be, analyst, in the playoffs, kind of like you see in pro sports where someone gets knocked out and they're, in a nice suit on TV. But it actually was like, holding cables and be on the phone with a truck in Toronto, telling them where the first down line should be based on where the ball was spotted. So it wasn't glamorous work, but what it was a invaluable education on the craft. And I got to see, obviously, Dwayne Ford and Tim Callett, but Sixero and Terrell Richards and Sarah Orleski and Adnan Verk up close and personal, see how they work. And I also got to see brilliant directors and producers, all the people behind the camera. I got to see how they work as well. And what I didn't realize that was happening at the same time, but what is that they got to see me work, and they got to see that I was serious about the craft. And when I looked for a job or opportunities afterwards, when I graduated, that week was a bit of a differentiator between myself and everyone else who was trying to break into the industry. So, that's like the first probably example. But there's been many since where you just kind of immerse yourself in the work and try to do good work and help people with the work and the stories that they're telling. And through that comes great opportunity.
That's a fantastic story. And it really resonates with me because when I started things, I also flew down to San Diego to cover the Vancouver Whitecaps on my own dime on their training camp and kind of got into things. So that's really cool to hear.
Good for you.
Obviously, Donnovan, you cover a multitude of sports. Do you have a favorite one that you cover?
Yeah, I mean, that's like asking me to choose between my children, and I only have one. So I would say this. I would say football is the sport I know the best because I've played it, at the highest level. It's the language that I speak. I speak 3 languages: English, Patois, and football. And so, and I might speak football better than the other 2, quite frankly. But I understand the mechanics of the game, but the culture of the game at a level much higher than the others. But the sport that really resonates with me and speaks to my sensibilities the most would be basketball. Just everything that comes with the sport, the culture, the fashion, the music, the style, the pettiness at times. And so, that's a sport that, I'm infatuated with, certainly. And I have a great deal of fun covering, and I have a great deal of respect for the people who play it at a high level, because they make things look easy that certainly are not easy. But yeah, I mean, I that's a sport that I've often chosen to tell stories about, but it's the sport that did not choose me as a youngster, as there wasn't as well a high market for 5'9" and 3/4 point guards with no left hand who can't shoot coming out of high school in Ontario. So I think those would be the 2 if I had to narrow it down.
That's awesome. And so let's move into the NBA. Obviously, LeBron James and the Lakers. LeBron's got his 4th NBA title now. Do you think this kind of solidifies his legacy? I mean, we obviously don't have time to get into the Jordan LeBron debate, but does this kind of stop things?
Yeah, I mean, this is not exactly the hot take answer that you probably want, or that goes viral or is aggregated in other content. But I quite frankly, I think anything LeBron does on the basketball court at this point, I mean, it's just the counting stats. Like, he's just, adding numbers to what is his legacy. You whatever your opinion of LeBron is at this point is fully formed, right? You either think that there has never been a player at his size that can do what he does, that moves the way he does, and that impacts winning consistently. That, I mean, like, just the fact that he's never really had a major injury, right? Playing at a high level. Like, he's never had a major surgery. He's never had a major rehab. Like, he is a freak of nature. I think he's the best athlete to ever play basketball. And I think if he played football, he would be a Pro Bowl, if not Hall of Fame level, wide receiver. But obviously, Jordan for many is the GOAT. But my point is, I think LeBron, there are no undecided voters, right? It's kind of like the 2020 election. Like I was kind of like, well, what's the point of these debates? Like, you've seen 4 years of Donald Trump. You may or may not like Joe Biden, but like, who doesn't know where they're leaning at this point? Like, let's just cast some ballots. And I feel that way about LeBron's career. I actually think what his real legacy will be, quite frankly, when it's all said and done, what he does on the court will be secondary. His real legacy will be everything that he's done off the court. And we just talked about elections and his work there, not only around voter suppression, but around polling stations and getting people to volunteer to work in them. His, his unabashed ability to fearlessly be political, right? Called Donald Trump a bum. He was on stage, campaigning for Hillary Clinton. He's opened up a school where he's providing not only free education but a pantry full of food and bikes and resources to get employment for struggling families in Akron. He's got a media company that not only is creating great stuff across platforms, but the people who work for it don't look like the media traditionally. They look a lot like him. And he's created an agency where players feel empowered to join that agency. But even the ones that aren't part of his agency, the player empowerment moment in basketball and sports, a lot of it has to do with what he's ushered in. So much so that he's not worried about his relationship with brands or with broadcasters. He's actually selling content to brands and to broadcasters. Like, he's totally changed the paradigm of how we see the modern athlete and, quite frankly, the modern minority. And so I think in a similar way to the fact that, a bunch of university students now, this fall have Muhammad Ali posters in their rooms and have no idea about his record as a boxer. And have no idea that there's a lot of boxers who, like, just on their numbers have a better argument to GOAT. I think in a similar way, in 20 or 30 or 40 years, there's gonna be a bunch of university students and whatever the version of posters in the room is at that point, like a hologram in the room or something like that, who will for them see LeBron as a change agent and like a historic symbol well beyond sports. So I think that ultimately is what his legacy is going to be.
It's really important too. I mean, just what he's done off the court for so many different aspects, whether it be political, whether it be just for education, whether it be for reform, whether it be for Black Lives Matter, and just starting a conversation. So I think I totally agree with you on that's his on the court legacy will be secondary. I thought we were going to get kind of a slow NBA offseason this year, and it doesn't look like we're getting one with, James Harden wanting a trade. We had the Chris Paul trade. Looks like I haven't really checked my phone this morning, so I don't even know who's been traded. So what do you make of the NBA offseason so far?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's your favorite fantasy league, right? Like, that's basically what, NBA GMs are doing. They're just making swaps. The only difference is in your fantasy league, unless it's a keeper league, which you don't often see for basketball, but you're not trading a boatload of future picks for players. And it's crazy that Robert Covington, nice player, impact's winning, nice role player. He was traded for more first round picks than DeAndre Hopkins was in the same city. Like, and DeAndre Hopkins is, for me, the best receiver in football. So yeah, that is just the NBA and the culture of it. And I really think it comes down to, a couple things. One, we talked about player empowerment and, LeBron, basically deciding where he's going to play. Well, now that's just what it is, and so whether it's James Harden saying, okay, like, peace, I'm good, I'm going to go elsewhere to try and win, or the threat of something like that happening where the Milwaukee Bucks are willing to risk it all just to make sure that Giannis doesn't look elsewhere. I think part of it that player empowerment impacts the pressure that teams, organizations, ownership groups, GMs feel to continue to put up a winner. And so that increases that risk quotient that general managers are willing to endeavor to go. And I think the other thing that does that quite frankly was the Warriors, and them being a juggernaut and them being a super team. Like, you couldn't just build slowly through the draft and think realistically that you were going to dethrone them for the last 3, 4, 5 years. You had to swing big. You had to trade for a Kawhi Leonard, not knowing if he was going to report, not knowing how his health was going to be. And so I think that as well, certainly, the Warriors may or may not be, still a dynasty post Kevin Durant, but that mindset, I think, was permeated throughout the league when they were running through the league. And then I think it's just continued shortly thereafter.
I mean, it could even almost have started more back with Miami too, with LeBron and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade there too with the super teams, as everyone's trying to emulate it. But so I'm joined now by Donnovan Bennett from Sportsnet on the Unnamed Sports Show here. Donovan, I couldn't have you on the show without talking a bit about the Toronto Raptors. So Marc Gasol's left. Fred VanVleet wants his money, which is well deserved. What do you think we're going to see from the Raptors next year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's probably better to be answered, at this time tomorrow after we see what they do in the draft. And I think, actually, to be honest, it'll probably be better answered in the next week or 2 or 3 when we know where they're going to play, and we know, if and if so, how many fans they're going to have in stands. Like, I really think that the Raptors have a choice to keep up with the Joneses and be a luxury tax payer. With that comes cost, and in the pandemic, everyone's trying to mitigate and watch cost. But I do think they could get very aggressive in free agency. But I think they are a for-profit business, obviously, and I think how much profit is going to be coming in over the next year will impact that. Do they just stay the course and build slowly and mitigate costs for a year, or do they keep their powder dry a little bit and be somewhat conservative and save some cap space and make sure that their books are a little bit more positive, given that they're not going to make as much money off of ticket sales and revenue this year, and then go hard in the previous in the future off season when there are many more free agents that are interesting, up for grabs. So I actually think, one's tied to the other. I certainly think they're going to make a strong push for Fred VanVleet because they're going to need a succession plan post Kyle Lowry, regardless of what happens. So he makes sense whether or not they're choosing path A or path B in the future. But I think how much money they are going to realistically make is going to impact how much money they look to spend in the short term.
I think fans sometimes forget that their favorite teams are also a business and have to make these business decisions. And as much as the fans can, clamor and yell about things, it's like, well, no, it's coming down to their money. And if it's your money, well, you're probably going to do things differently as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, an owner is looking at 2 pieces of paper to decide if they were successful at the end of the year. They're looking at their balance sheet and they're looking at the standings. And, some owners care about one more than the other. Some believe that standings impact the balance sheet, but others believe that even if the standings aren't good, if the balance sheet is good, then we had a successful year. They won't say that publicly, but that is why you invest that type of capital, is because you're hoping to get a return on that investment.
I think there's the third too. James Dolan looks at music sheets.
Right. Yeah. For sure.
So
I don't know how much he looks like the other two sheets. I think he just looks like music sheets.
I think he doesn't look at the other two sheets. But so Donovan, I kind of want to switch out of sports a little bit, and I talk about the NBA bubble. It's kind of fitting you have the equality shirt on. Just wanted to get your opinion on how you thought the NBA used their platform for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah, I think it was great. They were very intentional about it, which was important. I mean, I don't think it was perfect. Some of the players were upset about the lack of modality and flexibility around the social justice sayings on the back of jerseys. But if we are grading on a curve from the WNBA being on one side, that's always kind of been woke and they've never been asleep, and for sake of argument, the NHL being on the other side, who weren't willing to go all the way and put Black Lives Matter on the court. I think the NBA certainly was much closer to the WNBA on that spectrum, and are certainly probably going to be looked at of being on the right side of history. I thought a lot of that, though, quite frankly, as much as giving the league credit, a lot of that comes down to the players and them being intentional about using their platform, using their press conferences, using their bodies, using the fashion when they walked in and out of arenas, and then using their greatest asset, their skill, their ability, their entertainment, and strategically taking that away when they felt like they weren't being heard, or when they felt like the conversation wasn't leading to anything tangible. So from the PA to the individual players to the league as a whole, I thought a lot of good came out of being in the bubble. And now I'm patiently awaiting to see how that transfers into future seasons, future conversations, because you don't want to continue to beat the same drum and it becomes white noise, but you also don't want to fall back on all the great progress that has been made.
You spoke on future conversations, and I think that's really important, and that's kind of why I wanted to touch on this. I mean, people can put their Instagram photo, black it out for one day on a Tuesday months ago and stuff, but I think this is something that we need to continue and always have the conversation. I was just wondering if you could touch on any struggles that you or maybe someone else has kind of faced as a person of color in the sports media industry, because that's kind of come in the forefront the last little bit with just certain stories and things. I'm not going to bring any specific examples, but I'm sure you're very well aware of them as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I think you face struggles being a black man, a BIPOC man, a minority, someone from a marginalized group, a woman in general, and lots of facets of life. And sports journalism certainly isn't any different. I know that experience is not unique to me. I think, other than one or two or three specific interactions or examples, I think the prevailing difficulty is there's not a lot of people like you. There isn't a lot of communion or fellowship. There aren't a lot of other people to lean on because you just looking around, you see that you're a bit of an outlier, and so that impacts the way you move in those spaces, certainly, and it can be lonely at times figuring out how to navigate some difficult situations. The other thing, that I would just point out is the other nuanced difficulty is when you do talk about set issues, when you do talk about race or things that impact your community, that it's important and that you're there, and it's almost a duty or an obligation to be that voice for the voiceless. But it's difficult work. It would be great if it was shared. And there's gonna be some criticism that comes with it, both because people don't want to hear the message, and because people don't like the messenger. And there's also another fear of being pigeonholed. and being seen as someone who only talks about race or always talks about race, when at the end of the day, I mean, the shirt says equality for reasons. You want to be seen as equal. You want to be seen as capable of doing and covering everything. And so kind of counterbalancing those two things, the obligation to speak up on those things, because you have a privilege to have that platform, and so you want to use it wisely, but also personally, you want to just be seen as the same as your other counterparts who don't have that same obligation. It's tough to navigate, and it's difficult to navigate because it's not something you're going to learn in journalism school. There's no workplace manual that's going to help you navigate these things. It's kind of sink or swim, and you got to figure it out on the fly.
Well, as small as my platform is, I think it's important to kind of keep the conversation going. So I'm glad that you're able to join me and share that. And as much as we can talk about the sports and have fun with it, we can, as well talk about some of those other things. So thank you again for that, Donnovan.
No problem.
So we'll kind of finish off kind of on a lighter note. I'm a giant Timmins citizen. Been watching them since the Score days, since I used to go to bed with, fall asleep on the couch with the Score running 24/7 in the background. I'd get the same, sports highlights after, and, an hour and a half when it would start running again. What were some of your favorite moments so far that you've been working with Tim and Sid?
Wow. I mean, so my favorite moments are probably stuff that never made it to air, stuff that wasn't on air, not in studio, just hanging out with them, in the Score. In those days, there's an area called News Pit 2 of our offices where everyone's desks were, and it was kind of like it was our sanctuary. It was the closest thing post my university experience that I got to being in a locker room with teammates, or being in the dorm, in the common areas with friends. And so Sid and Tim were there, Cabby had a desk there, Adnan had a desk there while he was there. Myself, Randy Urban, who works for NBA TV Canada, had a desk there as well. And a bunch of other, producers and stuff that are great friends that, your listeners may not know. But yeah, that's where, the jokes were told, funny things were said, that we kind of pushed each other, on the work and on the journalism, and, gave each other, tips and advice and criticism, and encouragement. So that and it didn't really feel like going to work. Like, we never really punched in and out. We were kind of there, and race to get there the next day and be there, well into the night, and just hang out, and tell stories and watch sports, quite frankly. And I remember there's a photo, it's circulated online. This wasn't technically in the News Pit 2 area because it's like internal redesign had us placed in a different area at this point. But there's a photo of us, a bunch of us, watching the LeBron decision. And I can't remember who has it, but someone's tweeted it. There's a bunch of us there, and many people who have gone on to be high-level executives now. I think Greg Sansoni, who's our VP of programming, is in that photo. I think John Coleman, who is and I say our, meaning Sportsnet, our general manager of Sportsnet, was in that photo, I think. But in any event, it's all of us late at night watching the decision, looking up to like a TV that's on the wall, just like everyone else, like just a sports fan, like how a bunch of university students and families got together and watched it and couldn't believe what they're seeing. And as obviously that was like a primetime special at night, but we all, like, there's no other place that we would have watched. We all kind of made the workday extra long and watched together and experienced that history together. And so that is a representation of what that was like. So I think those are the fondest memories. We're all, a bit older now, have busier lives, and have families and kids and whatnot. But that was the bedrock of the kind of relationship, both work and personal, that we have. And so stuff like Sid Seixeiro rapping Wu-Tang songs from beginning to the end. I think he has a song Triumph memorized, which is like a 9-minute song with, I think, 9 different artists in it. So it's stuff like that that's just super funny. And I think that's more so than the work. That's the fondest memories I have. Like, people often ask, about the camaraderie and chemistry that those two guys have specifically. But, even when I go on their show, how comfortable it is. They ask about it, and I kind of tell them that's the way those guys are off of camera, and that's kind of a representation of those other journalists that I've spoken about. That's kind of how they are off camera as well.
You can see it in when you watch the show that you're like, this is how these people are, and you're seeing it kind of even more with the pandemic and them doing it from their basement, with them really having to be humans and interacting with. I think Tim was talking about yesterday, he had to greet his son coming in from a bike ride when he was talking to Raptors general manager there,
Bobby Webster.
Yeah, Bobby Webster. So so that that's good to hear. And I undoubtedly have a great producer too, so I'm sure that he will find that picture and it will be running over top of what we're talking right now. So
I would love to. I can't remember. Someone's posted on social a couple times since.
He will find it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. So yeah, if you find it, let me know.
All right. He is great. One time I had somebody on and I was talking about Star Wars, and the guy mentioned just the most obscure character. And when I watched back, he literally had a picture up of the obscure character that he was talking about, right? And I was like, how does he do this?
Yeah. Well, good producers are the most valuable thing you can have in this business. So it's good you got one.
Yeah, well, and he's gonna just say I'm just trying to flatter him on here, but I do love you, Lee. So, Donnovan, thank you very much for joining me. I'm taking up about half an hour of your time, and I know you're a busy guy, so we'll wrap things up here.
No problem. Glad we got the chance finally to connect, and I appreciate you and this platform and everything that you do well at a real high level. So keep doing it. And shout out to you, Lee. Appreciate you also.
Well, thank you very much, Donnovan. So that's been Donnovan Bennett on the Unnamed Sports Show here. All right, and we're back. I hope that everyone enjoyed that interview with Sportsnet's Donnovan Bennett. It was great chatting to him, and somebody I've looked up to in my sports journalism and media career. So that was really nice to talk to him and talk about some other stuff besides sports, because it is important to keep the conversation moving. So as we do keep the conversation moving, I want to chat a little bit about the NBA draft, which happened Wednesday evening. Anthony Edwards from Georgia went first overall to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Golden State Warriors drafted James Wiseman with the second overall pick, and LaMelo Ball went to the Charlotte Hornets with the third overall pick. Things got really messy from that point on. We did a live reaction show on the YouTube channel, so you guys can check that out if you missed it, if you missed any part of the draft. We cover up to about the 20th pick, I think the 21st. When we hit about 2 hours, we kind of started hitting the wall. So props to some of those people that do it for 4, 5, 6 hours and can keep on a roll there for that long for some of those reaction shows. So good for them. Some really sad news out of Golden State, as you know, we heard it yesterday. Klay Thompson kind of had an injury. He was going for an MRI. It looks like he will be done for the season with a torn Achilles tendon on his opposite leg that he had the knee injury about a year and a half ago against the Raptors. So that's really sad to hear. And our thoughts are with Klay Thompson, just hoping he can get healthy, because he is really fun to watch. Was kind of just thinking about my favorite Klay Thompson moments from the last little while, and that game where he dropped like 43 points or something ridiculous and dribbled the ball 4 times.
he's an elite shooter. Just one of the best shooters in our generation. Probably the best shooter I think I've seen since Ray Allen. So that's a big loss to not only the Golden State Warriors, who I had ranked in my top 5 in the West. Is probably going to change a bit, but to just NBA fans everywhere. I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I'm going to wrap things up here. Just want to make sure that you, again, hit that like button if you haven't. Join, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at Joshua Griffith 0. I'm going to have some great shows coming up in the next couple of weeks as I have guests just confirming left, right, and center. So tomorrow I will be recording an interview with the head coach of the Vancouver Whitecaps, Mark DeSantos. I'm going to figure out when that comes out. Hopefully, probably on the weekend, we'll figure something out. And next week, I have 2 guests as well lined up. I have Eric Smith, who covers the Toronto Raptors, sideline media reporter for the Toronto Raptors. And also, I have Renko Veselinovic, center back for the Vancouver Whitecaps, scheduled for a Wednesday interview. So that one will probably go on the normal show on Thursday, but we'll figure things out. Again, me and Leo, my wonderful producer, we'll talk about everything after the show for a couple minutes, unless he's got a hot date. He did that actually last night. That's probably why we had to wrap up the live show, throwing him out of the bus there. So thank you very much for joining me here on the Unnamed Sports Show. I have been your host, Joshua Griffith. This is the Sports Talkline Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. Thank you so much for joining me today.